conversations, and before we move on to the next question, and I think it was brought up by Ellen, and then Edwin, I know, so he sat in, and the other was brought up by Mike Sutton. When we look at it, which is, I think these three things are very fundamental to what we're doing here. Ellen asked the question, well, do you think you have to do KM before you could actually contribute to it? And I sat and I thought about that for a second, and actually, you kind of do. Everything in theory basically comes from practice. You have those pioneers. So that kind of is what we're doing here. We have these pioneers that we need to now capture. Knowledge management, what truly worked well and what didn't, so that we can establish that baseline to move forward with. We're not going to have anything perfect, but we did bring together this collective knowledge here, especially from some of the pioneers. And then the next thing was, someone said, you have to have a better understanding. And that's absolutely correct, but you know what? This is, you know, the normal distribution curve. The pioneers are probably going to be in that higher order of people who are going to move out and be self-starters, okay? So how do we get the rest to understand it? The better understanding doesn't come without a framework, which is what we're trying to do. Once we get the framework in place, then we start to transfer from the pioneers onto the others, which brings it back to what Edwin said, which I love, was fight, okay? Go out to the fight and then engineer it. We're going to the pioneers, you all, and others hopefully that are listening in, and we're gathering that so that, you know what, we can engineer it to get that framework. So that conversation was really beneficial to actually this whole initiative that we put into place. So I thought that was really good, and it tied back to what Mike had finalized. Before we go to the next question though, we've been talking for a while because I know that we did extend the time frame. So I want you to do one thing, stand up for about 5 minutes. Don't move, okay? No, I'm kidding. You can get some money. But stand up for about 5 minutes and shake it out a little bit, and then we'll move on to the next half hour, okay? We're going to kind of end it with, and again, we do the questions and keep digging further, so we're going to end it with, I think, a proper question. And it's, based on your experience and knowledge, how do you envision a KM curriculum that has a base that supports the about and the do? And I think we started in on that, so we can refine it a little bit. So we'll start on this end.
Let me, can I start down here?
You want to start down there?
Yeah, if that's all right.
You started last time.
I'm for doing that.
Okay, good.
When I heard the question that was asked about prerequisites, what was in my mind when I heard that was the prerequisite is actually doing work, like you ought to have a job, and or if I didn't have a job, my undergraduate work in engineering was as a co-op student. So we were working, doing engineering work as we were going through undergraduate school. Now there was a huge advantage because we had a lot of confidence and motivation to learn the next thing because we're applying it back at work. And the folks that weren't in a co-op program were way behind. All of us with co-op experience were promoted faster because we were providing value sooner. So if you had a curriculum that had a co-op system, that would be great. If you didn't have one, then back to the doing, then part of the curriculum has got to be doing. You've got to, it's got to be more than memorizing. There was a discussion on the ISKM the other day about you don't really know something unless you can write a definition. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, but I could recite a lot of definitions I know, and I really don't have any understanding. I could recite how you ride a bike, but if I can't demonstrate getting on it and staying in balance and getting to point A to point B. So my thought was that somehow, and that was my point about talking about the course that we had designed, the whole emphasis was on here's getting ready for the interview, here's the process for the interview, but you're not done yet because you're going to actually go do an interview before the course is up. And it's that doing part that I think is just absolutely essential. Absolutely essential.
Do you want to go sequence?
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So I'm a big believer in the doing and the performance. In fact, KM for us is about enhancing mission performance and being able to articulate how what it is you're doing brings additional value. And so from a curriculum perspective, the ability to have internships or individuals to go out into the community space perhaps that they're seeking to ultimately be employed in, or they want to learn more about and physically implement some of the procedures, theories, and things that they've been taught, and be able to prove that and be able to come back. It gives them case study data, it gives them the opportunity to have real life experiences. So we're a big believer in that. In fact, when we do internships, or when we do, as in the government they call TDYs, or temporary duties, when someone will be brought into your component to do a temporary duty, one of the objectives that we like to pursue is get them to own a project while they're there. Something that they can start, mature, develop, finish, and then write up, so that they then go back enriched with an experience that they own during that time. And so I think a good part of learning is really doing, because we're physical beings. We need to be able to touch, feel, smell the activity. And so to the extent a KM curriculum could incorporate physical learning by implementing, I think the student's experience will be enriched.
You jog my memory. Could I just add one more comment? When I was working on my master's degree, General Motors had a General Motors University, and they would bring in different universities. And at the time, everything was done with video, the internet, and teleconferences really wasn't available. Two unique things, and I think Denise talked about this, about having pilot programs. I wanted to do my electives all in organizational change and development, although it was an engineering degree. And of course, the university people knew us, and so I was able to convince them for all of my electives to be pilot courses, and I would provide them information. And I actually went out and interviewed the professors as part of the exercise, and created my elective curriculum that I thought I needed. And so that was one aspect. The other thing that I did is that I was really pumped up about organizational change and development. And I wanted to really be able to apply it. So one of the things I was able to do was convince the university, the university, on the application that I filled out, that my boss would fill out, that there was a statement there that said I must apply what I'm learning. Because what I was looking for was the authority to use some of these new change and development techniques in my job, and I didn't want my bosses shutting me down, so I made it part of the contract. And GM University, well, that's kind of the idea. So that's one of my thoughts, is that we might want to think about that, because that's a way to get real commitment from the student and the student's employer, that we're not just doing this because it's a fun thing to do, or this allows the person to get promoted or the next job. We're actually going to apply what the student's learning back at work, and we're giving you permission it's part of the contract. And that builds this portfolio, and et cetera, et cetera. So you jarred my memory there.